This is going to be a film study that attempts to package some of the Lions' run game concepts from last week against the Cowboys, but also large-scale observations from all of 2025. It really emanates from two data points. Number one, apparently Dan Campbell was asked about touches or opportunities or run game play concepts, I think on Tuesday in a press conference. Maybe it was Monday afternoon, and he seemed kind of annoyed by the question. I wonder if sometimes coaches' replies or maybe the tone of their reply might be related to who's asking the question and the quality or pattern of what they generally offer in those press conferences. But also it comes out of a study that someone did in our Lions Discord, some interesting data, basically the different style of run plays that are called for each guy. I think it was Jay Bags in our Lions Discord did a wonderful job of kind of mapping some of it out. I think over the weekend, after the win over the Cowboys. The idea that would be in my brain is Gibbs getting more of the off-tackle, outside zone stretch stuff, whereas Montgomery is, being relied upon in duo situations, downhill press the line of scrimmage where he can read blocks. I do think that's a real dynamic at times that maybe plays a little bit to their individual strength, right? But I don't know that whether plays succeed or not is the play style or the concept that is called by Dan Campbell / John Morton. I think the bigger factor into whether a run concept produces something or not is the predictability of some of the formations and then the offensive line's ability to block it up, given a certain situation or front by the defense. So what I did was kind of package these plays together from the win over the Cowboys to show some of the similar concepts that are actually being asked to run, and then some of the differences in their run style, which you're obviously familiar with already, but the way that it manifests itself on the field can give the defense different questions to answer on any particular play. So this is it's a 1st and 20, and the first couple that we go over here, to be honest with you, are not going to be very successful. This is a direct flow run concept, basically zone out of jumbo 11 personnel, jumbo 12 personnel, excuse me. I do think the jumbo aspect of what Dan Campbell and the offense are presenting is an interesting dynamic, and teams are coming up kind of with their own answers to seeing Skipper on the field so much as that sixth offensive lineman. Direct flow run concept, what do I mean? One running back in the backfield, in this case Gibbs, and it's direct flow, straight angled flow, generally considered inside zone. Sometimes the offensive linemen are just losing. In this case, we're having a double team split here. I think 95 is kind of getting some penetration in the backfield there. Really makes it difficult to apply any level of blame to Jahmyr Gibbs. There's just multiple losses across the front here for me. I'm not going to belabor the point for some of these because the real focus of this is trying to give you an idea of the fact that some of the play calls are specific to Gibbs and Montgomery. Some of them, Dan Campbell and the coaching staff are just asking both of those guys to execute, and it's just a matter of who's in the game at a particular moment in time. Same play from the all-22 angle. Something that occurs oftentimes recently with, it could be with Skipper on the field, but sometimes it's just with, any tight end, is trying to, stunt or press into the C gap. Now, it doesn't actually occur here. 41 is Ezeraku, the rookie for the Cowboys. It seems like the Cowboys have like 6 different edge defenders that they rotate all around. I didn't see Clowney in this game, but James Houston IV, Dante Fowler, Ezeraku. But anyway, these defensive ends, edge defenders, faced with Skipper, because he's not a pass threat, obviously, are oftentimes stunting and trying to get into the C gap such that they can play a factor or play a role on the backside of these run concepts, that flow away from them. We'll get another example of it here. A different formation, a different personnel group. It's still 11, but you do not have Dan Skipper on the field. You get an actual tight end. I think it's a Dwelly. So we're moving forward and backward sometimes during the game, to be honest with you. This isn't going to be a progression of plays from the first possession to the last. We're going to focus on under center run concepts generally, although we'll show you the touchdown by Montgomery that was from the shotgun. I really like this play. It didn't end up being successful here. I'll show you 2 in a row of what I'll call a zone windback. Again, it's direct flow, this case with Montgomery to our left. We're going to focus on the end zone angle first generally. So you got combos with the center and the left guard, combo with the right tackle and the right guard. But the right guard really rattles. He's just moving up to the Mike linebacker really quickly. What I love about this is the designed option for the running back to wind it back underneath of St. Brown's block. I would say that this is really just a C-gap insert is all it is. It's just happening from a different location on the field. What I mean when I say C-gap insert is normally the edge defender to a tight end is going to be in a 9. He's going to be out here. And so what you could get is the tight end stepping to that edge defender. Again, he's not located in that position. I don't have the graphical ability to take that player and those colors and transport it there immediately. If you know of something that's ease of access and maybe free or low cost, then let me know. But the C-gap insert will be a receiver from maybe outside inserting into the C-gap, or a player from the opposite side doing the same thing. I just think they're getting this done, but they're getting it done post-snap. And it actually generates a touchdown a little bit later. Using the unique skills of St. Brown, number one, as a potential blocker on the backside, so that if the running back does cut it back, you've got backside corner, maybe safety, sealed off and giving the running back the opportunity, the option, if you will, to cut it back off the backside. Another thing to talk about, and I kind of mentioned it with the first play, look at what the defensive end to the tight end side is doing. This is happening a lot more often. It wasn't just in the Cowboys game, mind you. So getting into the C-gap, I talked about it a little bit with Skipper on the previous play. Now, he doesn't get into the C-gap. He just basically annihilates a Dwelly and compresses him back, presses him back behind the line of scrimmage, and then plays a role in Montgomery trying to access that windback, trying to access that, most people would refer to it as a cutback. 54 is the guy that actually makes the tackle. You get the same element that shows up here. We do have Skipper on the field as the eligible tight end. The only difference is the motion is going with the flow of the play. On the previous iteration, and when I say motion, I'm talking about this motion here by Tesla, and then the running back flow, in this case Gibbs, going to the same side, the same direction where Tesla went in motion. If you recall on the previous play, it went in the opposite direction. But in any case, this is later on in the game. Of course, this is the one that puts Detroit up 37-27. You saw a ton of under center play action in this game. It's time. It's time for that, if you ask me. And so even if some of these run concepts are unsuccessful, Dan Campbell and the offensive staff sticking with them just opens up, kind of plays into that under center play action a whole lot as the game develops and basically forces the defense to kind of pick their poison. Same wind back concept. And St. Brown, once again, he's going to wind back through the C-gap and go get, I believe that's Deron Bland set up on our bottom left side of the screen. The motion, I guess the reason why they went with, I call this jet follow versus on the previous play, jet dive, meaning the dive is going in the opposite direction of the jet. Again, we're talking about or referring to the motion from Isaac Tesla and the direction where Jahmyr Gibbs goes immediately post-snap. What the motion does is gets all of these defenders to kind of shift to their right, our right-hand side of the screen. 14 actually overcompensates a little bit and comes back in the other direction, opposite of the run flow. And I think 14 is just tracking St. Brown. So I'm talking about Bell here. I think he's just tracking or reading St. Brown. And so when St. Brown steps in the opposite direction to set up that windback, 14 is there as well. St. Brown going to go get 26. 14 totally unblocked, can't do anything about it. You do, once again, have this nature of the defensive end to the tight end side. In this case, it's Ezraku against Skipper. Instead of being out here as an edge defender, he's no threat to pass, to throw the ball to, number one. Number two, maybe you don't have enough run concepts to the side in this game against Dallas. Basically, the idea would be Sewell would be able to easily take over as Ezraku. Skipper could immediately work up to a corner or a DB, a complete mismatch, and then you could run off tackle to the single receiver side or the side where the tight end is. Really nice cut by Gibbs. Same concept as the previous play that I showed you. The only difference is this one ended up being successful. 10-yard touchdown. I'll give you the same play from the end zone angle just to focus on, or excuse me, I should say illustrate, re-explain what I'm talking about. So Tesla goes in motion top to bottom on our screen, and Gibbs flows in the same direction. So we're talking about him motioning to the side and Gibbs' initial flow being there. I call that jet follow. Versus what we had on the previous play where the receiver was here, I think it was Jamison Williams, motioning across, and then Gibbs direct flow post-snap going in the opposite direction. Again, what I would refer to as jet dive. This is just a zone wind back to me with the option built in for Gibbs to wind it back behind St. Brown's block. I think Dallas is trying to mess it all up with the backside defensive end or edge defender. Ezraku diving in the C gap. The only problem is maybe Skipper holds here. I don't know. I don't know what makes Ezaraku, drastically go upfield like that. I guess he's trying to go to Jared Goff for a sack on a play action. Really poor discipline, if you ask me, because you got the corner or DB who's outside that would be responsible for Goff. To me, Ezaraku should have continued coming down the line to try to disrupt the blocking scheme, which in this case is St. Brown on the C-gap insert, or what I'll still refer to as a C-gap insert. In addition, you got Sewell closing off the inside linebacker. Sewell's helmet here. He's going to punch down and then close off the inside linebacker on the far side. I think it's the Mike linebacker, Kenneth Murray. And that's what really frees up Jahmyr Gibbs. So both of these guys, Montgomery and Gibbs, asked to run this concept. I don't think it's just so simple that they run certain plays with Gibbs, certain plays with Montgomery, and that's one of the reasons why teams are able to key on different concepts, basically minimize their focus or laser focus, I should say, on a smaller number of concepts that are possible depending on which running back is in the game. I don't think that's the dynamic that's occurring, and I don't think it's one of the larger factors that has made the run game somewhat less effective in recent weeks. I'm talking about since Jahmyr Gibbs put up 219 yards against the Giants. I do agree with some people who have levied the criticism, or at least made the observation, that they'd like to see Montgomery get the football more often. Not necessarily on certain concepts, but just getting an opportunity to kind of be the jab that sets up other things, sets up the play action. Normally I'm referring to that in an under center dynamic. This is, of course, in the shotgun. This is his 35-yard touchdown in the second quarter that gives Detroit a 17-6 lead. How they get this done, number one, the front side tackle is stepping out to Ezaraku. Obviously, from a size and strength and an experience standpoint, that's a mismatch that's in Detroit's favor. Combo blocks on the inside with the left guard and center working together, and the right guard and right tackle working together. So you got a couple of things that occur here from a blocking standpoint that really makes this work. So first of all, the contact balance of Sewell, and then being able to stay on his feet and redirect. He's taking the D tackle down. Now that D tackle is also kind of stunting to the inside, so it almost looks like he's attempting to go in this direction anyway, talking about 97. But Sewell then being able to peel off of that and pick up the inside linebacker gives that lane to Montgomery to squeak through, number one. Number two, James Houston IV up here, who ironically had a sack against Penei Sewell earlier in the game, which was a little bit surprising. In this case, he kind of slaps the tight end off and works to the outside. Yes, that is the gap that a defensive end or edge defender is normally responsible for. But in this case, it sets him to the outside and away from where the run action is going. The idea here for me in offering this evaluation or analysis is that Jared Goff is no threat to keep the football. So there's no problem with you diving to the inside. I guess the only idea would be then you're asking the corner, Siobhan Revel, to make a tackle off tackle. But it's a shotgun run concept. A great block, man, here by Jamison Williams. Really springs this, at the third level of the defense. So Montgomery is fighting through a bunch of contact by, I think that's Siobhan Revel. In fact, the unblocked corner we're talking about here, he'll close in and make contact with David Montgomery. But then as a result of no second-level defender at all from an inside linebacker standpoint impeding Montgomery's progress, his shoulder pads are square. He's got a low pad level, fights through it. Great block from Jamison Williams to spring him free right here. Montgomery cuts off of that. At this point, it's pretty much over as long as he keeps his feet. It was a great play, man. First of all, I would like to see him be more involved. Gibbs certainly deserves all of the touches, all of the attention that he gets from defenses. Absolutely, because he's a home run hitter every time he touches the ball. I like there may have to be some times where you think about shortening the game, basically keeping the clock running, trying to win a game by a lower in a lower scoring fashion. That might not be the dynamic this week against the Rams. Who knows? This is the all-22 angle of the same play. Like I said, 35-yard touchdown runs from the gun. Key block here, once again, from a receiver standpoint, is Jamison Williams. Montgomery, like I said, is in the shotgun. I'd like to maybe explore this a little more. How often they're getting him the ball in shotgun formations versus how often they're getting the football to Jahmyr Gibbs in a shotgun formation. Talking about with a run concept. It looks like to me the nickel DB is flying upfield, so Dallas is, in my opinion, exhibited some level of, or some lack of discipline. And then because of the ability of Jamison Williams, the willingness, I should say, to get in there and make this block, Williams cuts perfectly off of that. Tesla got a little bit of a close down on one of the other DBs. I think it's Bell, number 14. And Montgomery takes it to the house. Like I said, this is a big moment in the second quarter, putting them up 17-6. It seems like they're going to major in 11 personnel a lot. Makes sense, obviously, with Sam Laporta being out, Brock Wright being injured last week. The 11 personnel groups, the jumbo 11 personnel groups specifically, I'm interested to see what more they can offer from shotgun run concepts with David Montgomery in the backfield. Totally different scheme here. This is, of course, Jahmyr Gibbs' final touchdown of the game. I think it puts him up 44-30. Jumbo 13 personnel group. So you've got 3 tight ends set up over here to this side, one of which, the inside guy, is Dan Skipper. Really cool off-tackle scheme. First of all, from a formation standpoint, they've created a 5-man surface. So what we mean when we say 5-man surface is guard, tackle, tight end, jumbo offensive lineman, whatever, second tight end, third tight end. So it's a 5-man surface, whereas over here to the other side, you got guard, tackle, so only a 2-man surface. When you have a guard pull, like Cologne does here, someone from the backside needs to match it, numbers-wise. Otherwise, you do not have requisite numbers to defend the run concept. A little bit of a counter step by Gibbs here. And then Cologne is going to get all the way out to the field side corner. This guy right here that I have spot shadowed in purple. Logan Wilson actually reads it. He sees the pulling guard. All right, that's a simple read for an inside linebacker at that level especially. But you got a couple of things happening here that prevent him from getting to the ball. So the way that they get the blocking scheme done over here on the front side, the outside tight end is going to take 6 all the way down. And then that's what allows Gibbs to get off tackle, or out in space, off tackle. And then the inside tight end, the middle tight end, handles the inside linebacker in a way that ends up clogging the space up. Basically, Logan Wilson read it correctly. He read the pulling guard and the scheme, but he got caught up in what we would call the trash. And as a result of those 2 blocks and Logan Wilson being occupied by one of them, Gibbs and Cologne are 2-on-1, essentially, with the outside corner, Siobhan Revel, and it's over. There's just no way that anyone, for that matter, is going to be able to deal with an NFL offensive lineman and then get to Gibbs at the same time. Really cool play that David Montgomery could quite obviously run as well, but I think it really takes advantage of the speed of Jahmyr Gibbs being able to take that counter step and then burst to his right or left on the screen and get out to the edge behind Cologne. Hopefully explain that in a way that makes sense. We may see this for Montgomery, but for me, it's functionally the correct move to use Gibbs here because of his speed from this point to the edge means no one else on the inside could possibly get there. If Logan Wilson doesn't get caught up in the trash with number 0 and the block that occurred on him, then maybe Logan Wilson is in this space here and the Cowboys are able to offer a little bit more resistance on the play. As far as the Rams game goes coming up, I think you're probably going to see a healthy dose of 11 personnel, specifically jumbo 11 with Skipper on the field. Why? To make it easier on some of the zone and duo concepts to combo and have basically essentially less guys from B gap to B gap for the offensive guards and the center to deal with. Like I said, we're going to bounce around a little bit here, but from here on out, it might be progressional. This is a third quarter. It's a jet follow action. So the motion is left to right for the Lions, and then Jahmyr Gibbs is flowing in the same direction as the motion. This is also the same play as one of the touchdowns, to be honest with you, that I covered earlier. Again, you notice the dynamic of the backside defensive end, away from the run concept, crashing down underneath of the tight end. In this case, one more time, it's Dan Skipper. So you may see this dynamic occur a little bit in the Rams game as well. If multiple teams, and this was occurring before the Cowboys game, by the way, if multiple teams are doing this, there's a reason why. I think, you got to run, first of all, more play action boot with Goff to take advantage of that. If this defensive end is going to crash down to chase Jahmyr Gibbs, presumably flowing in the opposite direction, number one. Number two, also get into more running the football to Skipper's side, running the football to the tight end side. Maybe that's less of an option for the Lions because Sam Laporta at this point is out for the year. But you definitely see the dynamic of teams crashing down to the inside if they've got Gibbs on direct flow or angled flow. This is a little bit kind of duo-ish steps by him. Maybe a little less distinct of an aiming point than you'll get when you see Montgomery in a moment. Our angle is a little bit canted or slanted, but Gibbs has to bounce it because of that backside defensive end and then a defensive tackle who's in his face and penetrated the offensive line of scrimmage. It ends up being a loss of 5. This is from the same possession. The Lions were fortunate to get, I think, a 16 or 17-yard completion to Jameson Williams on a 2nd and long after that tackle for loss of Jahmyr Gibbs. So this is a split zone concept. 11 personnel once again. So tight end is set to the top side. He's going to work his way across the heels of the offensive line. So top of our screen to the bottom or left to right for the offense, while the offensive line basically runs their zone tracks. 11 personnel split zone puts this backside defensive end in tremendous conflict. Does he chase? Does he possibly sit square? Some people call it, hold and fold, slow play it, if you will. In this case, the tight end cuts him down. Gibbs' flow is kind of interrupted here. I think that's Williams, the defensive tackle, but I could be wrong. Short gain on the play, I think 1 yard. I would like to, at some point, see this type of setup with Gibbs and Williams on the field basically at the same time to the same side, and this bubble action as an access for Jared Goff. So basically allow Gibbs to cross his face, see if you get a reaction, or maybe some would say overreaction from these defenders here, basically the 2 inside linebackers and the edge defender that I kind of talked about. I do think teams are really focused on stopping Jahmyr Gibbs. That seems pretty obvious to me. Using him as gravity, bait, if you will, to possibly get an athlete like Jameson Williams out in space, I think is something they should pursue. We'll get into some of these third quarter runs where David Montgomery is running basically duo. I would call this a Montgomery play. And one of the reasons why he's so spectacular at it, number one, is he's got great feet, great balance. He's able to press the line of scrimmage on a downhill track, if you will, and then pick the lane that kind of opens up. You get a similar dynamic occurs here as to what we've talked about multiple times, whereby the defensive end or edge defender to the side of the tight end, in this case Skipper once again, allows himself to kind of stunt down or pinch down to an inside gap, almost inside shade of the tight end Skipper. And Skipper just takes him down. It basically ends up working out looking like what some people will call down or base, where you just run off tackle. But that's what makes duo such a pain to try to defend, is that you don't know exactly where it's going to end up. And if your offensive line can block it consistently and block it well, then you don't know the path. It's not predictable, I guess is what I'm saying. I think Dallas is trying to predict some of these things for their players. I think they're trying to force the Lions to declare on a particular path. I just don't know what the concept is for some of the stuff, how they're going to defend, how Dallas is trying to defend. It's the Rams, I would expect to be much more sound and not allowing themselves to get pinned down inside like this and this so easily. Nonetheless, I do think that 11 personnel duo stuff might be the way to go against the Rams in order to set up some other concepts, specifically the under center play action that Dan Campbell and Jared Goff relied on so much. Same play from the end zone angle. It goes for a 9-yard gain for Montgomery. Like I said, the defensive end that I'm talking about is on this particular play is located here, and he'll end up kind of getting taken down right to left on our screen. Montgomery reads it perfectly. With those DNs crashing so much earlier in the game, we're into the third quarter now, it's a whole lot easier to make that adjustment because you've been prepped for it. You've seen the pictures of it. You've heard the coaches and or the offensive linemen probably talk about it. Seems like a really nice job here by Radledge, comboing the defensive tackle and then moving up to the inside linebacker level. I think that is Murray. In addition, what's the benefit of all this jumbo stuff? Well, you're kind of being forced into it at this point with Laporta, being out, and then Brock Wright not playing last week. 6 offensive linemen against a 4-2 if it's 11 personnel, you're going to get a 4-2 in the box. So what I mean by that is your 2 inside linebackers. That's the second number for in the 4-2. And then your 4 is your 4 defensive linemen. Even if 2 of those players are, quote, outside linebackers, it's still considered a 4-2. Nobody calls it a 2-4. It's a 4-2 box presentation, and the nickel defender walked up kind of makes it look like a 4-3, but it's a matchup that you think as an offense you can win when you have Tesla, St. Brown, or even Jamison Williams assigned to block those nickel DBs. I would say this is more of a jab, to use a combat sports analogy, in that it's safe. You have a guy, David Montgomery, who can turn it into a somewhat bigger play, so maybe that's where my analogy kind of breaks down here. The jab isn't necessarily going to result in knockdowns or knockouts, but you got a guy who's really good at it, and I do think we need to see more of it. More of Montgomery being given the opportunity to press downhill and then kind of pick his lane based upon the blocking scheme and where the defense wants you to kind of go. Very next play, in fact, this is a 2nd and 1. It's going to go for 4 yards. Next snap, Tesla misses his block here, and this happens a couple of times, but earlier on in the game, a play that I'll show you here in a moment, he actually is able to pick up the block and turn it into a touchdown. So, again, it's a duo concept. The left guard, I think this is Frazier at this point, is trying to work up to the inside linebacker level. The front side inside linebacker does a really nice job, if you ask me, of taking that guy where he wants to go and trying to give Montgomery the opportunity to pick a lane. Tesla misses his block. You don't see the Cowboys defender, but he's underneath of that scrum there. Tesla had just missed the block. And that's the guy who makes first contact on Montgomery after he gets through the C gap where Dan Skipper is set up. Same play from the all-22 angle. Again, it's a 4-yard gain that does convert a 2nd and 1, so we would consider it successful. Even though it's a nickel presentation from a 4-2-5 personnel standpoint, 4-2, that's your nickel defender. Detroit has controlled everything about this. And so what I mean is they have lined up in a bunch set to the boundary, to a particular side. The ball's in the middle of the field. And what that does is it forces the nickel defender to that side. So once you get motion by St. Brown, if it's a pass play, you've kind of gotten some intel for Jared Goff in that, it's not man-to-man because nobody followed him. Number one. Number two, a safety steps out, and that just really sets up a whole bunch of things. First of which is the duo concept up to the top side, where Tesla and Skipper are located. Those guys are effective blockers. The matchups that Skipper's going to get this week, probably different from a power standpoint, Jared Verse and Young, than he got last week against the Cowboys. Don't think the Cowboys have nearly the same level of defense. That's obvious. The Rams are, I think, 3rd in the NFL so far in points per game allowed. Really what I like here that it sets up the most, and I don't know if this would be, a jab, a right cross, a left hook off of it, maybe a body shot, is the under center play action game. We saw a ton of that last week against the Cowboys, and I think you might see more against the Rams, even if it's early on before the run has kind of even been established. This is in the 3rd quarter. I may have actually messed up my tracking here. This play may have occurred chronologically before the previous 2 that I showed you, but I could be wrong there. In any case, it's a C-gap insert once again by St. Brown and a play action fake from Goff designed to possibly get the ball downfield. I believe that the focus of this route is probably St. Brown here, inserting, and then I call it a climb concept, meaning from this side of the field, climbing to the above the 2nd level of the defense on the opposite side of the field. Got a lot of lines drawn there. Forgive me for that. Why I call it a climb concept, and most, I recognize that most people do not, is with the ball in the middle of the field, a receiver from this side is getting to the top side of the field on the other side. So the right-hand side of the Lions offense, I misspoke, it's obviously not in the middle of the field. I mean the middle of the formation. And St. Brown is working all the way across. Really cool route here by Kennedy. Almost starts to look like he's going to pick Logan Wilson, but then he just sits down. Goff is definitely looking for this one, in my opinion, to St. Brown over the top. And he hits David Montgomery. Montgomery in recent weeks, I'm talking about since the Giants game, I think he's 4 of 4 or 5 of 5 on these concepts where it's under center play action. He leaks out to the flats. Generally, it's to the side where he also stepped. And so what I mean is Montgomery didn't step here and then end up over there where he catches the football. So it's not a play action boot. It's what I would refer to as a play action drop back. And what I mean by play action drop back, or what I was taught, is that the running back steps to the same side where he flows after the ball is pulled, after it's been revealed that this is a pass play and not a run. That's the difference, or at least it was explained to me. Play action drop back, same side step by the running back and where he flows, versus play action boot, the quarterback going in the opposite direction from where the running back stepped. In any case, under center play action was a big part of the game plan last week against Dallas. I think it has to be this week as well. Whether it's Montgomery or Gibbs back there, part of me would like to see it be Gibbs, because I feel like the Rams and many other defenses are so reactive, so focused on coming downhill and closing off any lane for Gibbs to get through, because they know the difference between those two guys. Gibbs gets a lane, an open slot to run through. It could be pretty much over. That was 13 yards on a 1st and 15. And like I said, Gibbs is 4 for 4 in the last 3 weeks on that concept. I think he's actually 8 for 8 catches to targets in the last 5 weeks. Last play that I'll show you here, it's obviously related to the previous one, the under center play action. This is the next snap, in fact. Let me move that out of the way so it's off of my grill. It's a 2nd and 2 after that 13-yard catch by Montgomery from under center. So it's another duo concept. And I love the conflict that Campbell, Morton, and Goff seem to create over the course of the game, which is we're going to go under center, run the ball. We're going to go under center, play action. We're going to go under center, play action. At some point, it's very similar to what the Rams do when they're under center and they're operating with, in Sean McVay's offense. Tesla will do a great job here, much better than 2 of the snaps earlier. He's going to go get this nickel DB 27. I think it's Stewart. It's a duo concept, and you've got initial double teams / combos here on the defensive tackle, and then there as well. One of them results in a pancake. 95 ends up on the ground, and you can see Tesla has basically wiped out the nickel DB, number 1. And number 2, I think this is Frazier taking down Logan Wilson, getting him out of there as well. Whole side completely caved in where Montgomery stepped. Montgomery initially stepped here, and that's where the ball ends up going. Duo doesn't exactly work like that. It could, and you've seen multiple iterations of it so far. You don't really necessarily know where it's going to go, especially with a guy like Montgomery. Keeps his shoulder pads square, and then he's got great feet, man. The vision to be able to cut underneath of number 0. I don't know how or if maybe he even saw it. It stands to reason that he probably did see it. I'm talking about this inside linebacker peeling back here, and then Montgomery getting his foot in the ground and cutting underneath of it. Got great vision. I'm not a huge fan of the duo concept because I've faced it before, and it's a pain in the butt to defend. So for when I say I don't like it, that's what I mean. But I really like it for David Montgomery and this Lions offense, specifically out of 11 personnel. Am I saying David Montgomery should get more carries and more touches than Jahmyr Gibbs? I mean, come on, guys. You know that that's not the level of analysis and not the way that I usually will comment on these things. I think the game flow, what teams appear to be, quote, selling out to stop is a bigger factor there, right? Who you can get blocked up. The Jumbo 11 personnel group is super interesting, man, especially when it's Tesla, Jamison Williams, and St. Brown on the field. All 3 of those guys are willing to block. You can set a physical tone with the duo concept out of 11 personnel, whether it's against the Rams or anyone else, getting those wide receivers involved in the run game from a blocking standpoint. They're willing, they're able to do so. I am not one that goes into this Rams game with nearly the level of negativity or pessimism as others. I don't see any reason why Detroit can't go in there and be able to move the football, put Jared Goff in high percentage situations. Of course, at some point, the pass pro is going to be an issue. The Rams have a great pass rush. They got a really great, really solid, interesting defensive structure, and they know what they're doing. They rely on their defense. I watched a significant amount of film of the Seahawks game against the Rams, and I would put those 3 teams comparable to each other. The difference is obviously that Detroit has suffered so many injuries at different spots that it's compromised them in certain ways. The most recent of which, of course, is Brian Branch, which is really difficult to even talk about because, I enjoy watching his film so much and appreciate what he's brought to this Detroit Lions team, since he came here in the 2023 draft as a rookie. Spectacular player. I hope, A, he makes a full recovery, and B, that the Lions do right by him from an extension standpoint. He's always been one of the best players on the field. College, the NFL, high school, obviously. I don't see any reason that Brian Branch can't come back and have a huge impact to be the same player at some point. It may not be immediately. In any case, if you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section. The idea here was to talk about what the Lions are doing in the run game, specifically under center for the most part, how different concepts kind of do cater to Jahmyr Gibbs and or David Montgomery. I think duo is one that Gibbs doesn't run very often because his style is more direct, more downhill than David Montgomery's. A little bit shiftier, vision dependent for Montgomery on those duo concepts. Gibbs is slightly different, maybe not as quality, high quality and consistent on the duo concept as Montgomery is. If you guys enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments section as always, like I said. And then finally, if you think other Lions fans would appreciate and enjoy my thoughts on the state or status of the Detroit Lions run game, as well as the plays that I use to illustrate it, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.